Some doctrines are born out of deep study, while apparently others are born out of sarcasm. Take Sarah, for example, the woman who laughed, the one who overheard a divine promise, snorted to herself in disbelief, and muttered something about her Lord being too old for romance. Yet somehow that offhand moment of laughter, recorded in Genesis 18, became proof text for eternal male authority. Fast forward to 1 Peter 3, and suddenly Sarah's smirk turned into a divine title that you should be bestowing upon your husband. You've probably heard it before.
Well, Sarah called Abraham Lord.
Right, because nothing says covenant partnership quite like referring to your husband as a minor deity over the dinner table. Imagine it.
My lord, would you like more potatoes? Of course, my lord, I will fetch you the remote.
If it sounds absurd, it's because it is. As if Sarah's sarcastic mutter and bombastic side-eye carried divine weight. It's simple, neat, and utterly missing the point. So let's rewind to the actual moment that Peter is quoting. The messengers had just told Abraham that him and Sarah would have a child in their old age, a promise that he had been waiting on from Yahuwah for many, many, many years. And Sarah, listening from the shadows, couldn't help herself. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, "After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure? My adoni, Lord, being old also?" This wasn't reverence, this was irony. A tired woman smirking at the idea of a rekindled romance with her gray-haired husband. "My Lord," she says, in the same way someone would say,
My husband at his age?
It was half laugh, half disbelief, and fully human. Between the time of the Hebrew adoni, which was a term of polite respect, we'll get into more of that later, and the English Lord, as we think of as more of a divine title, hence the Lord, which is not the same word, this nuance got lost in translation. The smirk became hierarchy, the laugh became law, and somewhere along the line, we all forgot she was joking. Now that we've revisited the scene where Sarah was hiding behind a tent flap, muttering about her Lord, let's fast forward to the moment in 1 Peter that is used to substantiate this doctrine. Likewise, wives, be in subjugation to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conduct of their wives, while they behold your chaste conduct coupled with fear. Whose adorning let it not be outward adorning of the braiding of the hair, the wearing of gold, or putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, in that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet ruach, spirit, which is the sight of Elohim a great price. For after this manner in the old time the holy women also, who trusted in Elohim, adorned themselves, being in subjugation unto their own husbands, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him adoni, Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well, and are not afraid with any amazement. Likewise, ye men, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the woman as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. 1 Peter 3, 1-7. Now, to Peter's readers who grew up on the original Testament, because anytime they talk about the scriptures, we have to remember what scriptures they're talking about. Scripture to them was Torah, it was Tanakh, it was original Testament. His readers would have been well versed in this story, and the reference would have landed instantly. They knew she wasn't kneeling in reverence, but snickering at the absurdity of the idea of bearing children at 90. Fast forward 2,000 years, toss in a few language shifts, and suddenly my adoni becomes lordship. Then the whole thing starts to sound like a marriage seminar instead of a faith story. It is the perfect storm of lost context. Hebrew nuance, Greek translation, and English paradigms, all layered together until sarcasm reads like domination. And yes, I can already hear the objections.
Why are you even bothering with the Hebrew? This passage was written in Greek.
Because 1, it's quoting from a Hebrew passage, so duh. And 2, Peter was talking to Hebrews, and he himself was a Hebrew. The Hebraic mindset was the lens that they were learning through. Their scriptures, their idioms, their worldview were thoroughly Hebraic, and all rooted in Torah. To miss how they read is to miss what Peter meant. As Paul reminds us, the New Testament was written for those who already know the Torah. It wasn't replacing the foundation, it was written for those who already stood on it. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth? For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. So before we start parsing out Greek verbs, let's do what Peter expected his readers to do. Read through the lens of Torah, which is where the passage that he's talking about was from. Not read through English tradition. Let's settle this once and for all. Sarah was not attributing godship to Abraham. And before you say, well, nobody is actually making that claim, spend 5 minutes on TikTok and prepare to be amazed. Sarah called Abraham adoni. She was not giving him a divine title. The Hebrew adoni was a cultural term of respect, much how we in modern day would say sir. One worthy of respect. That's all it means. It's a polite relational title. Same one used hundreds of times in scripture by ordinary people. Servants call their employers adoni. Citizens can use it for kings. Even strangers use it out of courtesy. When the Hebrew scriptures want to refer to Yahuwah, the Lord, they use adoni. Same root, totally different form, reserved exclusively for the divine. Sarah was not calling Abraham her God. She was using a common expression of respect in their language, more like my husband or my good sir in tonality, not the Lord my God. And Peter was not elevating Abraham to deity status either. He was quoting a cultural idiom that his Hebraic readers would have immediately recognized. The tragedy is that later readers, distanced by translation and culture, mistook a sarcastic my adoni for theological worship. Before we crown Abraham the eternal head of the household, again, I have a whole video on headship, so go watch that. Let's talk about what Peter was actually writing and to whom. Peter's letter wasn't a marriage manual. It was a survival guide. He was writing to scattered believers under Roman law, people who were already viewed with suspicion for not automatically worshiping Caesar or the other local gods. In that world, a wife who followed another god wasn't just suspicious, she was dangerous. So when Peter says, wives, be in subjugation to your own husbands, he isn't handing down a divine chain of command. He is giving a strategy for witnessing. The same rhythm runs through the whole letter. Citizens to rulers, servants to masters, wives to unbelieving husbands, all under one theme. Live honorably so that the world around you sees Yahuwah through your conduct. The Greek word for subjugation or submission is hypotassō, which we've gone over in previous videos about submission. It literally is about arranging yourself under. This word is about cooperation, not coercion. It is voluntary. In a military use, it would have been in purposeful alignment. In civil life, it meant choosing peace over pointless resistance. It's the same word that appears when there's a call in Ephesians 5 of total submission one unto another in the entire body of believers. And it also describes Yahusha, Jesus' willing posture towards the Father. None of these imply weakness. They reveal strength under restraint, power that serves instead of dominates. It's kind of like when Jordan Peterson talks about the idea of it is not morally superior to be a person who is harmless. It is better to be a person who knows what they are capable of, but chooses not to harm others. Peter wasn't telling women to lose their voices. He was showing them how to wield them more effectively. If hypotassō, which we translate as subjugation or submission, really meant hierarchy, the whole theology would collapse on itself. Because Yahusha, Jesus, is in subjugation to Yahuwah, the Lord. But this wasn't a power imbalance. It was unity in motion. A shared mission. The Son doesn't serve a superior deity. He reveals the Father. They are two dimensions of the same being operating in perfect oneness. If subjugation really meant inequality, we'd have to believe that the Lord somehow outranks himself, which doesn't make any sense. Peter is describing the same divine model that Yahusha modeled, oneness expressed through humility. Two equal parts in strategy to the same destination. And there's this quiet word that stitches Peter's argument together that we often skip over. Likewise. It shows up twice. First at the start, likewise, wives be in subjugation. Likewise, husbands dwell with them according to knowledge. This repetition is no accident. It's Peter saying, in the same way that I previously described. And what had he just described? Suffering of Yahusha, Jesus. In the previous verses, Peter wrote about the Messiah who, when insulted, did not insult back, who submitted to injustice without surrendering righteousness, overcame evil by doing good. Then he turns and says, likewise, wives. Not likewise under your husband's rule, but likewise in the same spirit of the Messiah. That one word links this whole passage to the crucifixion, not to cultural hierarchy. But Peter doesn't stop there. He says, likewise, husbands. He's tying men to the very same example. The husband isn't elevated. He's enlisted in the same call to humility. Likewise, you husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto your wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. That phrase, dwell with them according to knowledge, is not about domination. It's about understanding. Peter calls husbands to treat their wives as co-heirs, to honor them, and to recognize that spiritual pride hinders their relationship with God. In other words, Peter is saying, you both answer to the same standard, the humility of the Messiah. Likewise levels the field. It is echoing the call in Ephesians 5, where mutual submission amongst all believers turns the key and sacrificial love opens the door. It doesn't crown anyone. It calls everyone to the same pattern of courageous humility. But now comes the part that really seals the argument for most people. Even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well, and are not afraid with any amazement. There it is, folks. Sarah obeyed Abraham. The Greek word that we translate as obey, hypakouō, literally means to listen attentively, or to heed. It's the same root word used when Yahuwah, the Lord, hears your prayers, or when a person attends to a call. This isn't robotic obedience. It's relational attentiveness. Sarah didn't blindly obey Abraham. She listened, discerned, and responded with covenantal partnership. And let's be honest, if we actually read the story in Genesis, she had no issue voicing her opinion. She's the one who told Abraham to send Hagar away, and Yahuwah tells Abraham to listen to her. So if anyone is obeying here, it's mutual. It's going both ways. So this is not about canonizing hierarchy. It's about highlighting character, faith expressed through courage. That's why Peter finishes the verse with the line, whose daughters you are, as long as you do well and are not afraid with any amazement. If you read that in English, it sounds poetic, or maybe just a little vague. But in Greek, this phrase, not afraid with any amazement, paints a very vivid picture. It means not being shaken, startled, or thrown into panic. Peter is commending women for their fearlessness, not their fragility. He is saying, you are Sarah's daughters who do right when you refuse to be intimidated. And here's where we need to connect the dots. Sarah's strength wasn't in bowing to Abraham. It was in trusting Yahuwah, the Lord's plan through Abraham. She wasn't surrendering to her husband's whims. She was aligning herself with the covenant that Yahuwah, the Lord, had spoken over both of them. When Peter says, do well and do not fear, he is echoing the same pattern. Sarah didn't do good just because she was told to. She did good because she believed. Trusted that Yahuwah, the Lord's word, was worth following. That's not blind obedience. That's spiritual discernment. Subjugation was about cooperation with God's promise, not compliance with a man's control. And that's the difference that Peter was driving home. The women he was writing to were being called to do the same thing, to stand firm, to do good, to refuse the spirit of fear, to live with such faith that even unbelieving husbands would be one with your actions that spoke louder than words ever could. Sarah didn't enter covenant by submission to Abraham's authority. She partook in the covenant by aligning with Yahuwah, the Lord's promise. She trusted the voice of the one behind the man when Yahuwah himself asked her to believe in faith. That's what made her fearless. It should be an encouraging message to all of us that even if you start with sarcasm and disbelief, when you align with the promises of Yahuwah the Lord, he honors you. Because Sarah laughed in disbelief and then believed anyways. You can find all of this information in written form as a free downloadable in that description box, as well as my free downloadable Studying the Scriptures in their original language, which will help you with Hebrew, Greek, some notes on Aramaic, with modern day tools that will show you step by step how to start digging into these languages all on your own without needing a seminary degree. If you have any other obscure verses that relate to the dynamic between men and women, drop them in the comment section down below and I'll see about doing an upcoming video on the topic. I am working on my ebook diligently, You Are the Daughter of a King, which will contain all of the information that we have covered in this Biblical Womanhood series in one place. Due to be released in February. Until next time, don't forget, test everything and hold fast to what is good. May Yah bless and keep you. May he make his light shine upon you and give you that peace that truly surpasses all understanding. I'll catch you on that flippity flop. Shalom.